Hey everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from May 19th, 2023, and I'm recording this on November 17th, 2023. I'm still recovering from being sick, so you may get a little less details this week than normal just because of my voice, but they're all there in the slides as we go through these. We do have 20 books to talk about. As always, we're looking back at the CBSI and Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. Don't know if my voice is going to hold out this whole time, so we're just going to dive in and see what we can learn by looking back at these 20 books. First up, we have Marvel Comics Super Special #1, the second full appearance of Kiss in comics, but this is the one they supposedly mixed their blood into the ink, so it has a little bit of, I don't know, weird Kiss fandom nostalgia or something. But this was hitting the list because Gene Simmons announced he was starting his own comic production company. So that was why, or maybe just movie production company. I don't know. It just says production company. So it caused prices to jump up. Overall, raw prices are down a little bit. Looks like on average, they've moved down a little bit. Even the high grades are down a little bit. I couldn't find an equivalent CGC sale to compare here, or an exact equivalent. The highest I could find is that 9.0, but that's a pretty big difference. We'll see. Overall, we're just going to stay down, and I'll be back. Not the trap I predicted. There are a lot of Kiss fans out there that keep this kind of book up no matter what. Next, we have G.I. Joe and the Transformers #1. This was the first crossover, and this hit the list back before we knew about the Energon universe, and this was because there's rumors of a movie crossover coming. And so this was like $3 raw, 9.8 going for 100. And I was like, yeah, whatever, I'll be back. Well, then all this Energon stuff came out just not too long after this started coming out. All the Void Rival stuff. We got all the announcements. So this book has been straight cash over the last 6 months. 9.8s are up $400 or $500. Raw copies are definitely up. So yeah, this was not whatever back then. It is because of those announcements we didn't know yet were coming back then. This book has jumped up and has been straight cash and has considerably more value than it used to. And I would expect will continue to for a while. Next, we have Red Room, Crypto Killers #1. This Peach Momoko 1 in 25 was going for just over ratio when it came out, which is, and I asked the question back then, is Momoko still a thing? But obviously she still has her fans. But yeah, but usually just over ratio is not a good sign. And yeah, there's been no sales. The listing prices are basically in that same range, but there's been no sales. Nobody's chasing this book. Another down. We'll call it an I'll be back. You can call it trap. It's hard to say for sure just because you don't know what it would actually take, how low one would have to be listed for it to sale. All right, next we got Man Goat and Buddy Man 2023 special #1. This Paul Green 1 in 10 was going for $30 to $40. Another kind of Dr. Seuss variant. These tend to do pretty well, especially when they're a little racier, which this one is, I guess. For a Dr. Seuss thing, variant or homage. This one's still doing okay, 10 to 40, but it's definitely an I'll be back. Most of the sales are below the $30 range, although there are a few still there. Only two 9.8 sales, 50 and 150, which is a huge range, which means the 50 realistically probably got a decent deal and the 150 overpaid. But yeah, and I'll be back here as well, as you can definitely find better deals on this one than you could back then. Next, we have Sonic the Hedgehog #60, the Natalie Fordrun 1 in 10. And these typically have not held very well, these Sonic variants, but this one actually stayed basically right where it was at. It's going for right around the same prices, a few sales higher than that average back then, a few sales lower. But this has done pretty well, especially for a Sonic book. All right, we're going to keep moving. We got Superman #4. The Bizarro purple foil, limited to 1,000. Back then, this was, basically going for a limit 1,000 book. Hard to say. That's usually a little more scarce than like a 1 in 25. So this was really only going for about double ratio, but maybe not quite double what would be equivalent of double ratio. Because I think we've seen My remembrance is a 1 in 25 is similar to a one per store, which is about 1,200 to 1,500 copies generally. So this is a little less than that. Now it's a $30 to $55 book. So this is definitely an I'll be back, a book that you can come back on. 9.8s, aren't going to cost you basically the price to get the book and the slab. There's no premium here for a 9.8. It's kind of a cool foil, but I'm not big on these foils overall. Next, we have Batgirls number 18. The Robbie Rodriguez 1 in 25. This is a series I loved. I'm sorry to see it go. This 1 in 25 was going for $40, which is not even double, which is not a good sale, or not a good sign. It's at least a trap at this point because there's just no sales, even though listings are at ratio. Yeah, this one's, you could almost call it a dumpster fire, but yeah, it's definitely a book that's not carried any kind of real value going forward. Next, we have Captain Marvel number 5 from 2014, the John Tyler Christopher here Rocket cover. Obviously, this was right around Guardians coming out. Rocket was very popular back then, so this cover was going for big numbers raw. Not that much higher, though, for 9.8, but now only one recent sale, and it's way, way down. This has definitely turned into a dumpster fire. There was no sustained value here in this particular cover at all. All right, next we have Jabbas Palace, number 1, the second print, which was the Virgin. This was also a 1 in 25. I think the first print with the trade risk was a 1 in 25 on the first print. They did the cover again as a 1 in 25, this time as a Virgin. Raw copies out the gate were going 175 plus, which was huge value for this. But there was no real sustainability here, as it's now a 50 to 150 book. I mean, you can get the trade risk version. This has definitely turned into a trap. Low end, borderline dumpster fire, but definitely a trap overall. All right, we'll see if I can make it for 11 more books. Silk number 1, the David Nakayama 125 on the list for the second week in a row. We talked about it last week that it actually had continued to climb in value. Well, this was one of those second week peak books. It jumped way up. Last week when we talked about it, it was a $35, $60 book in its first week of release. By week 2, it was 100 to 125. Didn't sustain that. 40 to 80 now. So still better than the first week after release, but not as good as the second. 9.8s are only cost you 100 to 170. So this one definitely turned into a trap if you bought it during the second week craziness, which is usually the case when a book continues to climb like that. All right, next we have Spider-Man number 7, the Humberto Ramos second print, 1 in 25, first appearance of Spider-Boy. So another version of a first print cover. I think it was the 1 in 25 on the first print also, or the secret variant. I forget exactly what the ratio of the one showing him was that Ramos did. This is just the virgin version of that cover. Going for 40 to 50 back then. And I was like, yeah, well, this one's actually up. There's been sustained interest so far in Spider-Boy. He's got his own series right now. So yeah, this book has continued to go up some. It's been straight cast so far. I have my doubts on how long Spider-Boy will be straight cast, but I've been wrong before, so we'll see. And that goes for Spider-Man number 7, the first, which is the A cover of the first print. First appearance of Spider-Boy again. Yeah, this one is also up from what it was back then. Yeah, Spider-Boy continues to have some interest. People are chasing this character in this book. We'll see. I guess I'm glad I have the first print. I'm not worried about having any other versions, but we'll see if this character becomes something. I've kind of stepped away from all my Spider-Man reading because of my disappointment with the quality of it. So we'll see. Next, we have Wolverine number 1, obviously a classic book. This was hitting the list because I guess this was around the time that there was that controversy about Frank Miller's art having fallen off. Dude, that happens. I didn't understand the discussions back then. This is obviously the first solo Wolverine. This is a book that's on this list fairly often. People love this book. And basically this has been very steady. You could argue maybe raw copies or you could get better deals now. I don't know. I would call this extremely steady. This book is kind of just goes what it goes for. It's always in demand. Doesn't really jump crazy in prices, but it's just always in demand. It'll probably jump in prices when we ever get confirmation on an MCU, but here lately that hasn't really worked out well for books, for characters to appear in the MCU, so we'll see. Next, we have The Ambassadors, number 2. This is a series that was getting some buzz, plus the second print, or the second issue was kind of hard to find. It wasn't highly ordered, but yeah, it was going for big value out the gate, $25-$30, and now it's going for cover to $15. Yeah, this is a dumpster fire. There hasn't been any sustained value here on The Ambassadors. All right, just 6 books left. Let's see if I can make it. Running out of steam a little bit here. Star Wars Thrawn, number 1. First solo at Origin of Grand Admiral Thrawn. Obviously, this was in the lead up to the Ahsoka stuff. And this book is, we're not that far past the show and his appearance, and we've still taken a slight step back here. This is still a down and I'll be back. I'm not quite sustaining those values in the lead up to the show. No surprise. This is just what happens anymore, all the time with any of these Marvel Star Wars things, or DC stuff for that matter. As soon as the project comes and goes, the value drops off the table. This one hasn't dropped off that much yet, but yeah, it's definitely down. Next, we have Venomlethal Protector, number 2. First appearance of Orwell Taylor, which is a relatively unknown character, or person. At least I don't think they're important. I'd never heard of them before this. And this is because it's a shooting title for Venom 3, which I asked then, do we need a Venom 3? But Sony's going to keep making spider-related stuff, as we've seen by the Madam Web trailer, because that keeps the rights to Spider-Man and makes Marvel keep paying them to use him. So that's really what it's about. So that's why they keep making these things. But yeah, wasn't going for much back then, not going for much now. I would still call it like come back later. Like we're better off just being patient. Not that it was going for that much then. It's just there was no need to chase it. So next, we have Uncanny X-Men 239, first cover, second full appearance of Mr. Sinister, first Madeline as Goblin Queen. Yeah, this book there was some weird Guardians connection, potentially. They were talking about the Sinister and all this kind of stuff back then, which caused this book to hit the list. It's dropped back to where it normally sets, which turned it into a bit of a trap. Borderline trap, I'll be back. But definitely a trap here on Mr. Sinister. I know we're supposed to get him as part of that X-Men 97 cartoon. But yeah, definitely a book that's backed up. 3 left. Captain America 310. First appearance of the Serpent Society. Yeah, this is another one. Basically, Henry Rollins, Seth Rollins, I guess, appeared on the set. I said Henry, I don't know why, but Seth Rollins supposedly was on the set in a costume that looked like a Serpent Society character. This is talk about Cap 4. Anyway, this book caused this book to hit the list. It really wasn't going for that much. It's dropped back. Well, it's basically the same as it was. It's been pretty steady. But there was no reason to chase it back then. 9.8. Pretty high value here, but it's only one sale, so I'd be wary of paying that much for 9.8 of this. All right, next. Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., number 1. First solo Nick Fury. This was obviously lead up to Secret Wars, or Secret Invasion, excuse me. Yeah, this was kind of taking a step back also following that show, but this is a big enough book, an old enough book. It doesn't take a huge step back, even when you get past the show, but it has definitely taken a step back. And then our last book this week, Tales to Astonish 46, first appearance of Kraglin. Obviously, this was right after within a week or so of Guardians coming out. And Kraglin obviously played a decent role in Guardians 3. And yeah, this book has taken a step back. And I'll be back here. Not a huge step back. Obviously, another Silver Age book, so it's got some value intrinsically anyway, and it's a first appearance. But yeah, another character that's taken a bit of a step back. Hopefully my sound here is decent in terms of you guys can hear me. I may have to crank the volume up a little bit. I want to thank you guys for putting up with sick JP trying to get through this. But we figured we'd get our video out. I want to thank you guys for watching as always, and we will catch you next time. Later.